Alright, so welcome back. If you haven't watched the overview video, please go back and watch that so you can get an idea of what we'll be covering in this section here. I'll link that below. So with the third person template open, go ahead and open your content drawer. And with the content folder selected, I'm going to right click, hit new folder, and in this case, I'm going to call this one Terrain Demo. Now with Terrain Demo selected, go ahead and make a new folder underneath that. Call it World Creator. Folder called Materials. Folder called Maps. Now with the Maps folder selected, you'll want to go ahead and right click and select Level. I'll call it Terrain Demo Map. That's right. So now by default, we'll get a nice black screen on our viewport. So you want to go up to the little cube with the plus icon here on the top and scroll down to Basic. And we're going to add a player start. We're also going to add some lights, directional light, and the skylight. Then we're going to scroll down here to visual effects and add a sky atmosphere, and visual effects again, and a volumetric cloud. All right, so we have our basic setup. Next, we want to import our landscape. So up here on selection mode, so go select landscape mode, and we're going to click the import from file, and we're going to navigate to where we exported the 2K PNG. Now, if you haven't gone through that export tutorial yet, I highly encourage you to. I've done some setup for that texture from World Creator in Nuke. You can use Photoshop as well, but if you have access to Nuke, I just recommend you do it through there because there's some nice nodes to bring out a little more detail from your height map, and also being able to grab the border and ensure that that is masked out so that you can have correct occlusion on your lighting. So we'll get into that here in a little bit. So let me go ahead and import my heightmap PNG. Right, now that that's in here, you'll see that the overall resolution is already set to 2160 by 2160, which Unreal likes. Hit fit to data if you have something that's a different size, but this should all work right out of the box. Go ahead and hit import. And we have our terrain. So what I like to do here is go back into selection mode, select my terrain, and over here on my details panel, if you scroll all the way to the top, you'll have the ability to control scale. So this feels a little bit too displaced for my taste in comparison to the reference image that I have. So I'll go ahead and turn this down to about 70. And that should bring down the amount of displacement in Y. Feels much better. And you can also raise your terrain so you're closer to ground plane here. All right, not bad. So feel free to dial that in as needed. You also want to go ahead and make a plane for wherever the water is going to be. So for that, we go back up to the cube with the plus icon here and select shape and make a plane. And then on the scale, I'm going to go ahead and lock the scale, hitting this little icon here. scale it up. 4,000. A little too much. So let's go turn this down. Speed here. This seems to be covering it pretty decent. I'll go ahead and terrain more. Too bad. I think this was around the spot that we had in World Creator. So I'll go ahead and select all my lights and my player start and bring this over closer to where my reference image is at. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, I just control selected all of them from my outliner up here on the top right, so I can move them all at the same time. And then if you hit the End key on your keyboard, that'll have it down to the ground here. Now my player start, I'm gonna go ahead and rotate that so it's facing the same direction my reference image, and just to test that out, we'll go ahead up here and hit the play button, and there we are. Great. Okay. I'm back down now that I'm happy with that. And just to keep a little bit of organization on our outliner here, I'm going to click the terrain demo map, create a new folder, and I'll call it LGT. And I'm going to drag all my lights into that folder. Going to create another folder, call it cam, my player start in there, and I'll make another folder called ENV, drag my landscape and my plane into ENV, so that way I can keep everything nice and organized. Okay, so now that concludes the basic setup of our import from World Creator. All right. So next up, we want to go ahead and make a material. So do that, right click here and select material. Name this material underscore terrain demo. That to go in. And this is what you should get by default. If you don't see the displacement here at the bottom, you need to change some settings in your config file. If you reference my previous video, I covered that at the very end on how to set that up so you can see it. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and drag in our textures that we've downloaded from Megascans. Scroll down to my Megascans folder. We're gonna pick one. So we'll shift select all three of them here, the ones that say texture at the bottom left, and we'll drag them right up to our material. Right. And I'll go ahead and right away, I'll convert these to a parameter. Go. On this one, mask. And I'm doing that by right clicking the texture and going down to convert to parameter. Select the texture itself and scroll down to sampler source and change that to shared warp or wrap, sorry. Great. So now we want to go ahead and set up our size control. So to do so, hold the M key, make a multiply node. M key and left mouse click will make the multiply node here. And you also want to, or you can alternatively search here by right clicking on the material graph. And I'll do that for a text coordinate, texture coordinate. And then we also want a scalar parameter. All right, so now that we have these three in here, we want to go ahead and hook them up. Your coordinate to the A input of the multiply and the scalar parameter to the B input multiply. And you want to go ahead and hook the multiply up to all the UVs of your different textures. I'm going to go ahead and rename this parameter to size. And while we're at it, down here on the material expression, there is a group dropdown. You can go ahead and name this the name of the texture that you're dialing in. In this case, I'm going to call this one ground. And I'm going to click through my 3 different materials and do the same thing for them. Now, if you've already done it on one parameter, you'll have it show up on your dropdown. So go ahead and click through those and add all of them to the ground group. Now, if you want to see what this is doing, let's finish plugging this basic setup up. So we're going to hit select the RGB over to the base color. The red output of the mask is going to go into the ambient occlusion. The green output of the mask is going to go into roughness. The blue output is going to go into displacement. And the normals are going to go to normal. All right, so we have a very, very basic material setup. Now we're going to go ahead and hit apply and save that material on the top left. Now going back to your content drawer, navigate to where we've made that material, turning them on material folder, and right click that material and create a material instance from it. Now I just use MI. MI is my instance of that material. And if I open this guy up, you'll see that those parameters are now showing up under the ground group that we just set up. And we have the 3 textures, and we have the size parameter that we've set up. All right, so that's our basic material. Now we're going to go ahead and assign that to the landscape by selecting the landscape and scrolling down here on the details panel over to where you see landscape material, and you can either search for it in i_terrain demo and just click it right there. We have it assigned. Or alternatively, you can click and drag right from your content drawer and click and drag the material instance into the landscape material. Now that I see this, I noticed that we didn't set up a default value for the size, so let's go ahead and set up a value of 1. And that is now our default value, so let's go ahead and hit apply. Save that change, and we should be good to go. So let's go ahead, and this is the next section. Let's add those controls that we went over for the color, the albedo, and also some controls for the normals and for our roughness and displacement.